Well, since it's that time of year again, and well, since we're not going anywhere, let's play a game, shall we? I'm going to describe someone, and then you've got to figure out who it is. Okay, so this person is an elderly gentleman. He has a long white beard. He's a really cheerful chap, and he wears this long robe that's been lined with white fur, and he only appears in December. Okay, 3, 2, 1. What's your answer? Yeah, you read the title, so you probably guessed it. Anyway, what we're going to be talking about today is Father Chrismas, who is one of a few concepts that merged to become who you might know from all those Hallmark movies and commercials as Santa Claus. Now, Santa, of course, gets his name from St. Nicholas, who I was initially going to make this episode about, until I went down a bit of a Wikipedia rabbit hole and discovered that the tale of England's good old Father Chrismas was a tale that's not often told, and is actually way more relevant to this channel than I could ever hope for. So, step aside, St. Nick and Santa, I'll probably cover your tale next year, because your tale is just as fun, as well as all the other Christmas personifications that are discovered. But today we're going to be all about our English counterpart, Father Chrismas, who is a very different chap indeed. So, as with all things English, we have to go way back into the distant past, before the Romans and the Anglo-Saxons and all those guys. Our pagan ancestors more than likely had end-of-year festivals like any other. A great feast to cheer us up now that it was getting dark about 10 minutes after you've got out of bed. So we'll begin with Yule, celebrated by ancient Germanic folk and associated with Odin on the Wild Hunt, who would ride across the sky and are probably the precursors to a certain Kris Kringle's airbound reindeer-based entourage. Odin, of course, is depicted as an old dude with an epic beard and a habit of leaving gifts on your hearth, and this would of course become integrated into folklore. Of course, eventually the Romans showed up and we all got Christianised, but that doesn't mean that we didn't get rid of the concept, especially when the Anglo-Saxons showed up. The season of Yule became the season of Christmas, as Christianity started to nab all the best holidays and traditions and incorporate them into itself. Carol singing is a good example of this. During Yule, going to house and singing was a common practice, and us Christians just nicked the idea and sang about baby Jesus instead. That said, you can't keep good folklore down, and even though the UK became Christian, many of its traditions and ideas stayed around for a very, very long time. The obvious example of this is of the Maypole and the May Day celebrations. Still performed today, but what it was all originally about is now lost to the ages. Now, the English had been personifying concepts for quite a while, such as Mother Nature or Father Time, so it's not a big jump to say that when Christmas became a thing, it was given a personification. That said, folklore is often passed down orally, so the first ink-to-paper mention we get of a concept of Father Chrismas is in the 1500s. This comes in the form of a Christmas carol, where a figure known as Sir Christmas declares the birth of Jesus. But Sir Christmas was just one of a few concepts, often tied into the Feast of Fools, who included such dignitaries as Captain Christmas and Lord Christmas. He was this vague idea, who was the embodiment of eating, drinking and being merry at Christmas time. No presents, no reindeer, no elves, no children, just having a good time with drinking and feasting with family and friends. But then something kicked off in 17th century England that would change everything for old Father Chrismas: the English Civil War. So, like all of English history, this time was a bit complicated, and it involved the king versus his parliament. But it does involve a group that my American viewers may have heard of: the Puritans. These guys were trying to get rid of anything a bit, Catholic-y from the Anglican Church and society in general, and this extended to certain rituals and festivals that Catholics might have celebrated, such as Whitsun, Easter, and of course, Christmas. And, in a historic decree, the government, who were heavily influenced by the Puritans at the time, banned Christmas. No, I'm not even joking here. It was literally made law that you weren't allowed to celebrate Christmas. At this period in history, you'd got two camps: the Roundheads, who were fighting for Parliament, and the Cavaliers, who were fighting for the King. The Roundheads were the ones that won and were calling all the shots, banning Christmas, and the Royalists fought back with more than just weapons. They used propaganda. They linked the good times of Christmas with tradition, and the traditional ruler, the King. And who was front and centre of all these pamphlets and posters? Why, the spirit of the traditional English Christmas celebration himself, Father Chrismas. Yep, old Father Chrismas suddenly got all political, and he stayed that way until 1660, when England finally got its king back after a decade. Christmas and all its festivities were reinstated. Now that it wasn't such a big deal anymore, Father Chrismas slipped back into his previous role as being the spirit of Christmas time. And now he was no longer in the spotlight, he faded back into the background as he once had, and stayed there until a certain lady sat on the English throne. Queen Victoria. In Victorian England, the cheerful drinking and feasting Father Chrismas made his comeback, and it's here that the Father Chrismas that most of us know in England came about. He was still bearded, he wore long robes, and he usually wore a wreath of holly around his head. Some of the old Yule traditions resurfaced with him, such as the Yule log and the Yule goat, which, he would ride around on, only dismounting to party with people. Father Chrismas was often a popular character in folk plays, but how he was portrayed differed from region to region. In one place he was the bearded old man that everyone knows about. In another he could have been a soldier or a hunchback, or something else. But he was always a representation of fun and good times at Christmas. But there was one image of him that became burned into England's cultural memory, along with the book that it appeared in. Christmas was becoming a more family-focused affair in Victorian times, so when Charles Dickens wrote his book A Christmas Carol, it struck a chord with everybody in England, and one character in the book would certainly have been very familiar to them, the ghost of Christmas Present. Of course, this character was not Father Chrismas, but he was everything that a Victorian would have associated with him. Good cheer, beard, robes, holly wreath on his head, focus on family, a wassail bowl full of booze, and the need to party. Before St. Nick and a certain fizzy drink had gotten a hold of him, Dickens had shaped the image of Father Chrismas and Christmas itself. But I suppose now it's time to talk about the Santa in the room. Given that the two characters were very similar, the merger happened quite quickly, and they would soon take on the same portly red appearance, the white beard, the habit of leaving gifts in big socks, and he either wore red or green, trimmed with white fur as always. In the UK, he held on to his holly wreath headdress and his Yule log here and there, but by the beginning of the 20th century, most of these had been either switched or dropped to become the Santa that we know of today. The children of the 1900s saw Santa and Father Chrismas as the same person, but the goat-riding, cider-drinking Father Chrismas had been absorbed into the newer, family-friendly version. Nowadays, of course, even the name Father Chrismas isn't used that much, such as the merger of the concept, but you can still spot the influence of the old guy when you're watching all those Christmas movies. If you've got a Santa who's really, really jolly and just enjoys having a bit of a good time, well, that's Father Christmas's influence right there. So, if anything, I feel a bit sorry for Father Chrismas, really. After centuries of being a party animal who would join in with all the fun, he got relegated to the night shift, and instead of celebrating with all the family, he's treated like the guy who comes to fix your boiler, or the guy that drops off your Amazon package. Gone is all that customer service, it's now just a transaction. Poor dude doesn't even get his festive cider anymore, just a biscuit and a bit of milk. Well, I don't know about you lot, but I'm going to be leaving him a proper drink this year. So, now you know the difference. Who do you prefer, Santa or Father Chrismas? Why not share it in the comments? Do you want the partying Father Chrismas element back in your Santa Claus? If you do fancy it, hit subscribe for more theology and beer, and until next time, go grab yourself a drink and celebrate. Have a Merry Christmas, folks, and have a Happy New Year.